pop culture. Classic pop culture.
Thank you, Joe Mandica, Australia's gift to the world of pop music. Thank you, Joe, for writing, producing, and performing our classic pop culture theme song. Joe is truly a friend of this show. And how you doing, everybody? This is your pal and fellow fan of pop culture, Steve Ludwig, welcoming you to another edition of Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture, right here at planetludwig.com. Congratulations, you have landed safely and peacefully on Planet Ludwig. And be sure to visit our Planet Ludwig YouTube channel for many cool videos. Here we are, doing this since 2013. And this is show number 164. And our guest, oh, how special I feel, is the legendary Livingston Taylor. Livingston and I recorded our interview just 3 days ago as this show premieres. And I guess the best way for us to hear it is for me to stop talking right now and get to the brilliant Mr. Livingston Taylor. For over 50 years, Livingston Taylor has been making our musical world a much more beautiful place to live. From his 1970s self-titled Livingston Taylor album to his recent 2019 box set, Live, L-I-V uppercase, lowercase e, very cool, 50 Years of Livingston Taylor, and those 19 other musical journeys in between, Livingston has found a cozy home on the Billboard charts. Plus, the Music Award for Outstanding Folk Album for Life is Good, and the City of Boston declaring January 18th, 2017, Livingston Taylor Day. He's a writer, an author, a pilot, and certainly one of the finest singers, songwriter, musicians we'll ever have the pleasure of hearing. It's my honor and certainly a privilege to welcome to classic pop culture, Mr. Livingston Taylor. Mr. Taylor, this is Steve. I'm so happy to speak with you.
Well, Steve, I know it's you, and thank you for those lovely superlatives, and most generous of you, and I'm delighted to be speaking with you today.
I'll tell you, the pleasure is certainly all mine, and my goodness, we have so much to talk about. You're so busy, but I thought we'd start right here in the present. How do you feel about getting back on the road and singing in front of real live people?
Well, I love to play, love to sing, and, nobody does something like this, Steve, for 50-plus years if they haven't been having a reasonably good time doing it. And
certainly sounds like it.
I have, so it's really... for all of us, are you kidding? The last year is, the last 15 months have been very, very disruptive. And at the minimum, they've been disruptive. And for so many of us, they've been absolutely tragic.
Yeah, I'm married to a nurse, Livingston, so I feel what you're saying. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And I don't have to tell you anything about the burden that this has been.
We've all had our...
But that notwithstanding, how fantastic to have vaccinations and to be walking out of this mess.
And back on the road.
And back on the road.
I want to mention to our listeners, LivingstonTaylor.com. All the tour dates are starting to appear now, which is fantastic on your website. And everything's on your website, by the way, LivingstonTaylor.com, and I'll get back to that more soon. I wanted to ask you a question. I want to ask a few questions. I have them right in front of me. But how do you decide what set lists you're going to play on a particular night?
That's a good question. Generally, there is an intersection of a stage, an audience, me. It all happens at one point in time where it comes together, and then I just sift through the colors I have on my palette, and then I think to myself, well, this would be nice to play, or this would be a good idea, or I would love to hear this now in front of this audience. So that informs a lot of it. Basically, how I'm feeling at the time, but other things are important, such as, oh, jeepers, this is a song that people really like, and and they've paid good money to hear me sing it. So, in spite of my own personal motivation, that would motivate me, and I take that responsibility seriously. So,
yeah, and I'm sure, knowing they've come to see you, they know you, and I think you have a pretty good grasp on what they would like to hear you sing.
Yes, and that said, I'm not running a democracy. There are things that I think that they should hear, and so I take that seriously as well.
Now, I have a favor to ask, if you don't mind. It's a small favor. On Friday night, November 19th, please get an extra good night's sleep, because the next night on Saturday, my brother and I are going to your show at my father's place at Long Island, and I want you nice and fresh. So I want you nice and fresh for that show.
Favorite places to play.
Isn't it great? Oh my goodness, yeah. But I'm looking forward to seeing you there. So you'll be nice and fresh. I want you to get a good night's sleep before that. Okay?
I am going to be fresh as a daisy, as I'm fond of saying to my students. 3 things you should never be: sick, tired, or busy. And,
I just wanted to let you know we'll be there cheering you on for sure.
Oh, that's really nice, Steve.
Livingston, I wanted to mention, too, a brilliant, well, you're an author. You've written a couple of children's books, of course. And I wanted to ask you a question about in your stage performance. Stay Lean and Simple, Tell the Story. What a brilliant book. I own the revised edition. And I urge the listeners to buy this book. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not on stage, but I found this book to be so fascinating. I'd like to ask you or bring up a part of the book, and I think it was brilliant, about, I'm going to paraphrase, but when your show, so to speak, begins when you walk into that club or arena. It doesn't start when you get on stage. It's how people see you entering. And do you know the part I'm talking about? How you hold?
Oh, sure.
Could you elaborate on that a bit, please?
I'm sorry, say again?
No, could you elaborate on that point, that it starts when you walk in that door?
This notion that a career ever gets turned on or off, you're always either in a state of observation or a state of remarking on that observation. So when I come into a venue that I haven't played before, I'm looking around. How does it feel? How do they feel about themselves? How are the corners dusty? Are the what's the more information I can get walking in, the more I can the better I can service my audience. And so this notion of taking in, of knowing where you are, of watching a crowd filter into a hall, all of it is just extremely important. And get as much information as you can.
And I mean, I won't. Really, I'd love for the listeners to read the book for themselves, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But there are so many brilliant things about, one of the quick points is how you mentioned these people in so many words. They're coming from their own little worlds too, to sit down there and watch you, and you're dealing with a couple that could have had a bad day, a couple that may have just decided to start dating, and it's all these different kind of people that you're dealing with, and you have to present yourself, the performer, as, hey, I'm here for you. And you're so clear on that, and I think it's just so many good points in the book. I highly recommend everyone, please read this book, Stage Performance. I wanted to quickly go back to the 50 Years of Livingston Taylor. Now, I bought the deluxe box set. Love it, of course.
Oh, that's nice.
I want to tell the listeners, too, that also has the brilliant, the DVD, Life is Good.
Uh-huh.
And you have two versions of Over the Rainbow on the live set, on the live album. Do you still believe there in being an over a rainbow? Do you believe that there's somewhere still for us to go to?
Well, I certainly thought we've heard repeated many times, Steve, that where there's life, there is hope. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that, and I was wondering to myself, is hope so compelling that life was invented to manifest hope? So instead of being where there's life, there's hope, perhaps it should be where there's hope, there's life.
Very interesting.
It may be that hope is the overriding universal force. It certainly seems to drive all life on Earth. The hope that that if you're a tree, that the seed you produce will find a good place to grow. It's very interesting to me. So back to your question about Over the Rainbow, the question is, and the question that Yip Harburg is asking with that lyric, or remarking on with that lyric, is there hope? And the answer is, not only is there, I'm of the absolute belief that things work out well. I am. I love the time we're in today. I just can't imagine how successful we are as a species, and there are 7.7 billion of us on the planet, and violence and mayhem is not the norm; it is the exception. We get along well.
I'm so glad you're saying this. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
People are good and enthusiastic. It's really remarkable.
Mm-hmm. We tend to hear the bad, but like I'm so happy you said that. There are so many more good people in the world that just don't find the need to say it out. I'm good. Just from their actions, we know that they are. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, good and well is the assumed position. The reason why we receive bad news and look for bad news is that is the exception, and you want to hear about it and know about it.
Mm-hmm.
If a rock is going to fall on your head, you want somebody to say, "Look up,"
Right.
or "Get out of the way." So the reason why news is predominated by bad news is that it is not the norm. The norm is good news.
What a great point. Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm so happy to hear you say that. I'm going to go off the path just a little bit because, of course, your rendition of "Over the Rainbow" is classic. That Wizard of Oz is my favorite movie, so I have to ask you this: do you have a favorite part of that movie?
That is a very. Let me just think. Certainly, a favorite part of that movie is when the four of them see the city of Oz for the first time in the distance. And, of course, then they have to go through the poppy fields,
right?
which exhaust them. And
there's that hope, right, Livingston, that you were just talking about?
Yeah. And I love the depiction of the city of Oz.
Yeah.
Ha, 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 ho, 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 and a couple of fa-la-las.
Oh, yes.
That's how we laugh the day away in the merry old land of Oz. And then that great Yip Harburg lyric, we get up at 12 and start to work at 1, take an hour for lunch, then at 2 we're done.
Yes.
It's just a
fantastic. Yeah,
it's a wonderful commentary on how hard work was in the 30s. You went to work and you worked hard all day long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You how many years have you been teaching now, Livingston? I'm sorry, I should know that.
I've been at the Berklee College of Music for 30 years, and that's been a wonderful ride. I'm finding that it's my intention to wind it down a bit over the next couple of years, and the reason why is that I have the energy to tour, and I really want to concentrate on being out there and with my audience. My audience is getting older, and I'm getting older, and I want to spend as much time with them as possible. Young students are eternal.
Yes, yeah, and 30 years is a nice amount of time to give of yourself to your students.
Nice amount of time.
Yeah, you know, I'm a retired teacher, so I'd like to ask you this question, coming from a little experience anyway, on my part. Isn't one of the greatest things when you hear from a student, maybe that you haven't heard from in years, that you had such an effect on, and that they made a success of their dreams thanks to you? But isn't it great to hear it from them?
Yes, I am always delighted to take credit if somebody wants to give it. I'm mindful not to fall into too quickly into humility, and that said, I always know if they want to think that I'm the cause of their success or helpful in it, I'm delighted. You and I both know that there are two ingredients to being successful, and they are not talent and good looks. The parents of success, their name is tenacity and good fortune.
Very interesting. Yes. And a point I wanted to bring up too was, as teachers, teachers are performers as well. Do you agree with that?
There is no question that a good teacher, is performing constantly. And one of the things that always is a concern to me is when I hear noisy HVAC, noisy air handling units in a classroom, because that forces the teacher to shout. Very, very difficult.
And I can imagine teaching music, music presentation and performance and things like that as well.
Teaching anything.
Yes, yeah.
Because you have to have silence. You have to have no additional input for things to get absorbed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess I could call it an offshoot of your classes of teaching is your annual Livingston Taylor retreat. That's fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit about that? It's in August this year. It's in August, but
for many years, last 12 or 15 years, I've taught a performance retreat at the Berklee College of Music, and that's been very good and very successful. And I've taken that now independent of Berklee, and we give last year the COVID blew us out of the water, but
sure.
Year before that, we had a weekend retreat, and this year we're having just a single day as the schedule got too crazy. But we've got a single-day retreat in August at Endicott College, north of Boston, and that's going to be a wonderful, informative day.
What happens during that day?
Well, what will happen is that during the morning session, which is 2 hours, probably a little over 2 hours, we'll talk about music, talk about performance, what makes a great song, how to present, how to be in the moment. And then after, we will have an afternoon of critiquing performance. I'll have students do a short performance, and then attendees do a short performance. And then we'll spend time making sure that that's as good and sharp as it can be. And
again, everyone, LivingstonTaylor.com is where you can get the information on that as well. And incidentally, that's where I bought my my box set. Really nice website, very nice website. Couple more things before we say goodbye, Livingston. And I hope this is going to be a never say never answer from you, but I just want to see run this by you. Can you see a time when you and your Taylor siblings, Kate, James, and Hugh, do a one-off type show or even a tour of some kind?
Well, it's an often asked question.
I would imagine, yes.
And I can't say it will never happen, but let me see. I'm 70. Kate's 72. 71. I'm sorry. James is 72, and is James 73 now? March. That's right. James is 73. So my own sense is that we get together, but the notion of piecing together that sort of show, it's certainly possible for Kate and James and I to do it. Our little brother Hugh, he's a restaurateur.
Yes,
he's
sure.
a wonderful singer, but So my own sense is that we did it when our oldest brother Alex was alive. We did a few shows, a few events together, and they're available on YouTube.
Yes,
and they're fun to watch. we're a very close family, but
Yeah.
the prospect of taking the month of rehearsal and a couple of months on the road, that sounds like a daunting task.
Yeah, it's easy for me to ask.
All of us at this point.
Yeah, it's easy for people to ask that, but there's so much that goes around it. You know, rest his soul. You mentioned your brother Alex. What do you think of when you think of Alex? What do you think of?
Well, Alex was simply the best oldest brother anybody has ever had. I'm rather a presumptuous, arrogant sort, but I was always that, and yet I was sort of an asthmatic, skinny kid. But I would be able to walk without ever having any hesitation or fear at all, because I was covered with the blanket of my brother Alex's authority. Mm-hmm. And it was known throughout Chapel Hill, North Carolina, that if anybody messed with me on any level, they were going to be guaranteed a substantial thrashing by my older brother Alex. And as a result, I simply led a charmed, trouble-free youth under the blanket of Alex's protection. Now, occasionally he would pound me to find dust.
Well, he's a brother.
But that was the price of admission. And
yes,
no, he was a truly great older brother. He was alcoholic,
right?
And eventually the booze took him out.
Yeah.
And James and Kate and I, we none of us drink, and we haven't drinking or drugged for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I have. I just very quickly, but I have a younger brother. He passed, but I had a younger brother, Tom, and he, like I said, the youngest. And by the time he was born, my dad, who had his demons with alcohol, all Tom ever heard were the stories of what my older brother and I grew up with. I mean, my father turned out to be the most loving, once he got sober. But Tom never touched a drop of alcohol because of what he had heard. So it's funny you say, how all of you guys are now straight and on the straight and narrow. But well, listen, before we say goodbye, I want to mention that there was...
by the way,
yes.
And let me say, Steve, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother, Tom.
Oh,
I
thanks.
I know how that... I know what that is, and I know that is it's an ongoing...
yes, thank you.
A source of pain, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. 3 years ago, cancer got him, but he left a lot to us. He was only 56, Livingston. How about that? Oh, your brother Alex was even younger. I was going to say he was only 56, but your brother Alex was even younger. It's just...
Yeah, brother Alex was... he was
in his
45.
Yeah. Anyway, we always get through it.
Oh, yeah, no, you carry on, and...
my brother Bill and I.
And the also, as your listeners well know, who've endured loss, yes, the joy and hope return, and the memories go to a place of where they evoke joyful, melancholy, if not outright laughter.
So true. So true. Beautifully put, Livingston. If anything good, and I'm putting that in quotes, in air quotes, if anything good can come out of the pandemic, the Livingston Taylor Show is such a... Oh my goodness! I love your show on YouTube, and now I am a proud Patreon member of the Livingston Taylor Show. Before we say goodbye, could you give us a little, those who haven't yet gotten into it, get into it, everybody. But tell us about the Livingston Taylor. It's such a
Well,
nice, homey kind of great show.
Well, what happened, Steve, was that first off, there were 3 shows that that really influenced me. One was Bob Ross and that painting show on PBS.
Yeah.
And I loved his demeanor and his gentleness. And then there was Fred Rogers with that musical component. And then there was a show that ran from 1967 to 1957 to 1964, and that was the Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs show, brought to you by Martha White Flower from the Grand Ole Opry. And it was a half-hour show, and I can't remember whether it was once or twice a week, but anyhow, I watched it on a black and white TV as a kid, and I love the idea of putting together a show that had sponsors, that has a theme song, that has a logo, and I've now morphed it into Patreon, and I was sort of iffy about whether to do that, but the yes, all of my Patreon revenues go to my office, go to those, go to the people who work with me.
Yes,
and it's not a huge quantity of money, but it's certainly appreciated by them, and I'm delighted to do it. It's a very interesting time as we've transitioned the entire world to the Internet for the distribution of digitizable creativity. And it's very interesting where that's going to wind up and shake out. That would require you and I have at least another hour together to discuss.
Which I wouldn't mind, but we are out of time. But I want to mention patreon.com/Livingston Taylor. Click, and you support this really great show, everybody.
That's nice of you to talk about that.
Yeah,
and the good news is that there are some. There are entry levels that are most reasonable in price.
Yes, yep, absolutely. Yeah, you have your choice, everybody. Just support Livingston Taylor Show. Like I said, it's for the crew and for those that put on the show. Just give it one look, everybody. If you haven't already on YouTube, you'll be hooked. And
that's really sweet.
And we're so thankful that you give that to us. And my goodness, I'm so thankful you gave us the time, Livingston. It's I'm a first generation Livingston Taylor fan. I'm 67 myself, so I've been there. So I can't tell you what a joy it's been to speak with you, and how kind you've been to give us your time. And thank you so very much,
Steve. My pleasure. I love you, and I will see you soon.
I love you as well, Livingston, and Godspeed to you. Thank you.